Hello, dear Bach friends. Good evening, buenas tardes, amigos de Bach en todo el mundo, liebe Bach-Freunde in der ganzen Welt. As you know, we broadcast a special program on Bach's Cantata 4, Christlage in Todesbanden, a few days ago, and we were delighted to have wonderful followers from all over the world, thousands of them. Thank you for watching us, and thank you for sending us your questions. Muchas gracias por enviarnos sus preguntas y por vernos hace unos días. Danke, dass Sie unsere Sondersendung zu Bachs Cantata BWV 4 angeschaut haben und uns so viele Fragen im Vorfeld geschickt haben. So, dear Ruedi, here are we again, not at the church in Stein, but in our office in St. Gallen, where the Bach Foundation really works, where everything is planned. And we thought that instead of writing back to every single person who sent in a question, we would make a short video, putting them all together and just exchanging a few thoughts on that. So this is why we're sitting together today. Shall we start with the questions? We are of course talking about those questions which could not be answered during the program. So as you know, our program was a live stream, and Ruedi was of course, for almost 2 hours talking and playing the organ on the keyboard and discussing the intricacies of this very complex piece. So we got this very interesting question. Wie machen Sie den Livestream möglich? How do you make a live stream possible?
Well, luckily it was not my responsibility to get the live stream functioning. I just know we've got great technicians, and it costs a lot that we get it in this quality, and I'm very happy about that, because I'm sure this direct contact with you, Xoán, and with me is much better with a fine quality.
I would agree. Quality is very important to us, and it also costs a bit of money, as you mentioned. Here's another question. Could you recommend 1 or 2 books in English on basic knowledge or a biography on Johann Sebastian Bach?
Well, that's a fairly difficult question, although you perhaps think I'm speaking English. I read, of course, Bach books in German, but I asked my colleague Anselm Hartinger, and he said the Christoph Wolff's biography, The Learned Musician, would be really interesting. And then, which is a shorter biography, it is Charles Sanford Terry. I never read the book. I know Christoph Wolff in German, and I can imagine it might also be interesting for you to have a look at Sir Eliot Gardiner's book on Bach.
And what about your scores? Somebody asked a question about the scores you used in order to perform Bach's works. What kind of edition is it? Who is the publisher?
I'm using the NBA, die Neue Bach-Ausgabe. The Neue Bach-Ausgabe, that exists since, I think, about 1950, and ended about 2000. And there all the works from Bach are printed, and I use that.
Here are 3 very interesting questions on the issue of authenticity, period instruments and so forth, which of course is a big issue for us, for our ensemble playing on period instruments. So here are the questions. Do you think it's possible to achieve authentic musical interpretation if one plays according to the traditions of certain era? Is it a good method to mix in something fresh and accessible for the younger generations, while staying within the musical context?
That's of course an incredible question.
Yes.
And I think I could have a whole lecture on that. I mean, if you consider that you've got your period instruments, you've got the individuals playing the violin, it's Eva playing the violin, it's Renata playing the violin.
Yes.
they've got another character both, and they look at it with their instrument. Of course, they've got the violin bows, which are different as the modern violin bows. Or if you've got an oboe, you've got the old-fashioned oboe with less klappen. What's klappen in English?
Well, I'm not sure. It's about holes. Is this all about
holes?
And those, yes,
those
the
things.
stops.
Yes, the stops, exactly.
The stops.
Of course, the character of the instrument is different, but the character of the players are also different.
Yeah.
And I think, it's my experience, if you've got somebody who understands the music of Bach, or really digs in the analysis about the music, then I've got the feeling you can do it on anything. You saw me playing on the keyboard, and you can get in. And don't forget, Bach himself also had pieces he wrote for the violin solo, the bim pum pum bi di 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 da ram pum bim pum pam di. That's a violin fugue, and he also wrote an edition for organ and one for lute. So actually he himself played his own pieces on different instruments. So I think it's absolutely possible to put in. You could even take a bass guitar, or do it with a jazz orchestra. I mean, think about swingle singers. Think about.
Well, you know, the great Bach performer Rosalind Turek, the American pianist and cembalist, used to play Bach on the Moog synthesizer many years ago. So,
I'm sure it functioned.
So I think the answer is clear. We also got some questions during the program, during the broadcast, and we wanted to speak shortly about these issues as well. So here wrote someone regarding Cantata 4, Christlag in Todesbanden. Have you heard Pachelbel's setting under the same name, and how far was Bach influenced by it?
Well, I'm convinced that Bach must have known about this parallel composition. It's, by the way, a magnificent rendering on Christlag in Todesbanden. And if you hear that, you realize what an incredible composer Pachelbel was. By the way, Pachelbel was the teacher of Bach's Bach's brother, elder brother, who took him to his place to Ohrdruf when he was an orphan. And what I also think might be a similarity with the two works, you've got this symmetry in the middle, a choir, then you've got on the left and the right hand side you've got the solos, then if you go out again on the left and the right hand, the two duettos, and then again a choir and a choir. That's the same in Pachelbel, and perhaps Bach even copied Pachelbel, but we have got no very clear evidence that Bach really knew the piece. But the possibilities are very high for me.
And plus, we are always discovering new things about Bach's biography and who he met, who he didn't meet, and so. There was also a question regarding those chromatic patterns in the piece, and whether or not these lines are called ostinato.
I imagine you are thinking of the piece number 6. It was the 5th verse, the right Easter lamp. And that's called a passus duriusculus, a hard pathway. And of course, one immediately thinks that might be an ostinato. Well, the definition of an ostinato is that you've got a little bass section like this one, dee ra da 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 dee, and then perhaps dee 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 da. But that's not yet an ostinato. It has to come again. Dee da 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 dee, pom dee dee da. The bass will go on. Dee da bee pa da dee da da la da bo da dee dee wa. Now I was singing the bass and trying to invent a new variation. And in this case, it's not a ostinato, because it only comes about 3 times in the whole piece. But of course, if you think of the Cantata 12,
Great. That was also a question.
that was a question.
Somebody
Tell
asked
me.
about that.
Oh, tell me.
En la cantata BWV 12 también, which it is also in cantata.
Oh, what a good
12.
ear! What a good ear! Yes, that's the base of this Weinen, Klagen, Wursten, Zagen. No, I think it's something else. Weinen, Klagen,
Sorgen,
Zagen. Yeah, exactly. I forgot that. And there it's an ostinato. Yeah, it comes again and comes again. And by the way, did you realize that piece which Bach wrote, I think it was 1712 or something like that, he used it afterwards for the Crucifixus in the B minor Mass.
Yes.
That's an ostinato.
Yes. Yeah.
Also Pachelbel's canon is actually an ostinato going dee da dee da dee da dee da dee da. An ostinato is just something which comes again and comes again and comes again.
Un obstinado.
Un obstinato. Yeah.
Stur.
Stur, what does that mean?
Well, you
like some Swiss are, but I'm not quite sure if it's only the Swiss who are stur.
Well, I think other nationalities are stur too.
Yes, it's a character, I would say. You need it. I think Bach in some way was also very stur. Perhaps that was also one part of his great success over these last 3 centuries.
Yeah, that he didn't give up, right?
No, he never did.
He didn't give up.
And his music is also written like that. You've got the feeling it goes on, and goes on, and goes on.
Somebody asked, wie alt bist du? How old are you? Do you want to answer that question?
I don't want to answer that question, please. Ladies never do that. Of course, I'm 60, soon 69.
Well, there you go. You got it. Somebody wanted you to give a lecture on the hallmarks of Hallelujah, which I think you said a lot about during your lecture already. Hallelujah.
I had read this question in advance and thought that was a great idea. You could have just only talked about all the Hallelujahs in all these 8 or 7 pieces if you disclude the Sinfonia. You remember one was Hallelujah, 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 Hallelujah. And the other were dismal, the others were with optimistical tendencies. And I'm sure that Bach wanted to also show all his colleagues, look, I'll try to propose not only one sort of hallelujah, but I'll try to make 7 or 8 different hallelujahs.
Right. That brings me to the next and actually last question for today. And the next question is dealing with Luther, with Martin Luther. Did Bach like or look up to Martin Luther? How much of influence, if any, did he have on Bach since Martin too composed? Well,
that's, I would say, music history.
For somebody who composed a Luther cantata like yourself and performed it at the Warburg, where Luther was a prisoner, I think you should have a lot to say about that, Ruedi.
Well, Luther was an incredibly important person for every Lutheran church musician. Luther said, music is like praying. And singing a chorale is like double praying. You sing as pray, and you also talk the words, and that's praying once again. I think what was a very important influence on Bach was the attitude which Luther had against the cross. For him, the cross was absolutely central. And if you look at the John's Passion or also the Matthew Passion, you've got really the idea that Bach took this idea, like also BWV 4, which is also actually the story of the cross. Because Jesus Christ was crucified, the human was
in a very plastic way, by the way, in this cantata.
Absolutely,
in a very even aggressive way in terms of poetry.
And musically, Bach just overtook these hymns which Luther had written like any other cantus firmus. I don't think the composing of Luther was so important for Bach, but the compositions which Luther adapted for the church music of the Reformed Church, I think that was very important for Bach.
And the texts and everything.
That of course too, yeah.
Of course. Well, these were the questions we wanted to answer after our program on Christlag in Todesbanden. There will be more programs of that kind. We are about to begin the wonderful month of May, the wunderschöne Monat Mai.
We both are thinking of something completely different, are we?
We are.
In wunderschönen Monat Mai. That's, I think, Heine and Schumann. Lovely music too, of course.
Well, Schumann was, of course, a great admirer of Bach. There's no question about it. But in May, we will be broadcasting another program, this time on Cantata WWV 183. Sie werden euch in den Bahn tun. So please feel free to send in our questions, your questions, not our questions, your questions on this cantata, which is of course totally different to Christlag in Todesbanden. And be ready and expect something really interesting coming up on May the 15th, again from the church in Stein, with Ruedi at the organ.
And Xoán not only in the background.
Thank you very much for watching.